When I'm feeling blue, all I have to do is take a look at you. Then I'm not so blue. When you're close to me, I can feel your heartbeat. I can hear you breathing in my ear. Wouldn't you agree? Baby, you and me got a groovy kind of love. Anytime you want to, you can turn me on to anything you want to, anytime at all. When I kiss your lips, ooh, I start to shiver. Can't control the quivering inside. Wouldn't you agree? Baby, you and me got a groovy kind of love. When I'm feeling blue, all I have to do is take a look at you. Then I'm not so blue. When I'm in your arms, nothing seems to matter. My whole world could shatter. I don't care. Wouldn't you agree? Baby, you and me got a groovy kind of love. We got a groovy kind of love. We got a groovy kind of love.
That's it.
I didn't have it written down.
We fill every garden with these, we can get more people in. 360. Come round, a couple of seats and still free. Get everybody in, we can pop.
When I'm feeling blue, all I have to do is take a look at you. Then I'm not so blue. When you're close to me, I can feel your heart.
How's it? As Steve would say. Well, at least I hope that's how he would say it. My name is Catherine, and I welcome you to this beautiful setting as we gather to honour and celebrate the life of Stephen Hollingsworth, better known as Steve and as Padda. And Padda came about when he was playing tennis with his best mate, and someone commented saying that they were like a couple of frogs hopping about the court. And consequently, Dinny got called Frogman and Steve became Padda. And from that point on, all his South African friends knew him as Padda. And during our time together today, we will pay tribute to Steve's life and express our love and affection for him. And our welcome extends to those who are joining us by webcast, who can't be with us in person today, but who I know will be thinking of you all. And they too are in our thoughts. And so today is a day for thought and reflection for us all. We are united in grief at the end of Steve's life. But thanks to him, we are also bonded by happy memories, kind words and love. And this will draw us all together. And I hope that when you leave here today, you will do so with a real sense of having shared in something special for this very special man, as we celebrate the memories and the times of how he touched the lives of others and brightened the world, making it a better place in his own special way. I met with Debs, Becky and Jake just recently, and whilst it was under the saddest of circumstances, nonetheless, as we spoke, there were smiles as Steve's character and so many happy memories were recalled. And it very soon became apparent what a much loved and highly regarded man he was. And together the family have carefully chosen their words, music and poetry for today to reflect and celebrate his life and to celebrate his strengths, his skills, his achievements, and his unique personality. And on their behalf, I would like to thank you for being here and for the many cards and flowers and your support and kindness, which has been a great comfort. And your presence here helps his family realise just how valuable Steve was to others and shows what an impact his life has made. And it is hoped that his happier times will remain in your hearts forever. And any donations left in his memory will be shared between Cancer Research and the Fund for a Memorial Bench at the Ram's Head, where Steve and Debs met 30 years ago. And following our service, you are all warmly invited to make your way to Goulburn Sports and Social Club to continue this celebration of Steve's life. And it'll be a chance to remember him there and share your memories and your stories with each other in less formal surroundings. But may your time here give you the opportunity to pause for a little while and reflect on the whole of Steve's life and what he meant to you personally. And when we think about his life and his 59 years, there is quite a lot to reflect upon. And although his life has ended far too soon, he leaves a wonderful legacy of love and happy memories. He was and he will always remain a dearly loved husband, a dad, a son-in-law, brother, brother-in-law, nephew and uncle, and a teammate and a true and loyal friend to many. He will also be missed by other members of the family and the extended family, and friends too numerous to mention. But know that you are all acknowledged and you are all appreciated. So do remember in these hardest of times, the gladness and the happiness that Steve experienced throughout his life. And there will have been so many people who shared good times, fun, laughter, and kindness with him. And there have been countless memories made and adventures that have taken place as a result of and involving Steve that it is impossible to mention them all. And I'm sure there'll be many tales as you reminisce together later. But for the next few minutes, it is a privilege to share with you just a little of his life. Steve was born in Warrington on the 8th of November 1963 to Ken and Jennifer Hollingsworth, his sister being Susie. When Steve was just a young boy of 7, the family emigrated to Durban in South Africa due to his father Ken's career in the paper industry. It took a while to get there as they travelled overseas by cruise liner. Over a period of time, they lived in Rhodesia and Johannesburg before they settled in beautiful Zululand. And it was here that Steve attended technical college and where he joined the army to do his national service, making many friends along the way. And Steve later worked for CV Personnel, where he met Garth, and they became firm, lifelong friends. And Garth has recorded a personal tribute especially for today. And we'll take a moment now for his special words.
Steve, a.k.a. Pada. When it comes to Steve, what you see is what you get. And what did we see? We saw a man who loved life. Steve was a free spirit who lived his life to the full. I remember with affection the memorable times we had together, spent mainly in the swamp. He was dedicated to his family, and he loved them passionately. And he loved his dear mother, Jen. He protected friendships fiercely. He was a good, loyal, and loved friend to many of us. Steve had his faults, as we all have, but he never betrayed his friends or his family. He was patriotic towards anything African, and we regret that he never had a chance to come out to Africa as he and Debbie had planned to do in 2023. He was passionate about his sport and especially proud of Becky and Jake for their achievements. His love for Debs was special. He left South Africa and intended to travel the world with his mate Bryce Dukes. He chose to start at Warrington because that's where his roots were. Well, on almost the first night here, he met Debs at the Ram's Head, and that was it. He never went to see the world, and he actually settled down. Everybody was concerned about how Steve would settle, but his marriage and Debs changed all that, and they had 28 happy years. For all his roguish bravado, he was a sensitive fellow, always avoiding confrontation and never knowingly offending anyone. Steve had a special place in the hearts of our family, and we are forever grateful for the help he gave Claire and Sharon especially. Steve was an exceptional friend. He's already missed. Go well, my friend. Hamaga Ashley Makolo. This is Garth, Trish, and all of the McCartney and the Phillips family.
That was a fabulous tribute. As we've just heard, in November 1992, Steve decided to go travelling with his old army mate, Bryce Dukes. And they made the journey back to the UK and to Warrington to stay with his nan and grandad. Steve's Uncle Al and Pat lived in Loughton, and Steve and Bryce came to spend some time with them too. And so Alan took them to the local pub, to the Ram's Head, where Debs worked 3 evenings a week. And of course, they immediately hit it off. And we could say the rest is history. Steve and Bryce had planned to travel further and to move on to other places. But after visiting Ireland, Steve returned to England and stayed with Debs. Love blossomed from their friendship, and by December they were having great fun and sent fake engagement photographs to South Africa purely to wind his friends there up. The following year, Steve and Debs travelled to South Africa so that Debs could meet his family. And on the 4th of June, Steve proposed to her in the middle of Felixton Cricket Field. And he didn't go down on just one knee, but he actually went down on both knees. The next day, they went to Granville Racecourse to make the engagement official with his mum, dad, and his sister Sue. That trip was full of many adventures, and Debs enjoyed meeting all Steve's friends and wasn't put off by hearing the stories that they told. On their return to England, Deb's parents, Ken and Ruby, held a big engagement party for them in the family home and garden. And whilst saving up for their wedding, Steve's sister Sue's own wedding in South Africa was approaching. And it was due to be held just 5 months before theirs. But of course, there was no way they could afford to go, as every penny was accounted for. However, Steve's father thought that they were secretly planning a trip with the intention to surprise Sue. But when he realised that they were serious and that actually they couldn't afford to go, they just didn't have the money to attend, he booked a flight for Steve from Heathrow to South Africa. And Deb's parents paid for his flight down to Heathrow and gave him some spending money. And so Steve travelled to South Africa and he made it to his family just an hour before Sue's wedding started. And whilst he was away, he wrote a letter to Debs saying how much he loved her and that he was looking forward to marrying her, but also that he really loved South Africa and he wanted to stay there. And of course, she broke her heart when she read that letter, and she's always kept it. But needless to say, unfortunately, Steve came home a week later to her. And so Steve and Debs married on the 20th of August 1994 at Loughton St Luke's. It was a fabulous wedding, and friends and family travelled from all over to share their special day. including from South Africa and from Denmark. His mum, his dad, sister Sue, his best man Din, and Gary, who was an usher, and of course Garth and Trish. And it was wonderful to see them all. And following their wedding, Steve and Debs honeymooned in Jamaica, where they partied hard, and they won countless games and drinking competitions. They had a fantastic time. They returned home to start planning a family, but children took a while. Meantime, they enjoyed another trip to South Africa, this time to spend Christmas and catch up with family and friends. And following fertility treatment, they welcomed the birth of their daughter Becky on the 18th of August 1996. Followed a couple of years naturally by son Jake on the 11th of May 1998, and their family was complete. Over the years, they enjoyed many holidays to Deb's parents' timeshare in Spain, and they became well-travelled, visiting France, Tenerife, Mallorca, the Dominican Republic 3 times, Florida, Turkey, and returned to Spain many times, to the villas as well as lots of camping. And the cousins' annual camping trips were always great fun. They went on a number of fabulous family holidays with parents, and with Steve's sister Sue and her family, and Ian and Jenny and theirs. And Steve was the uncle that everyone loved. A boys-only golf trip to Mijas in Spain was organised to celebrate Steve's 40th. But it rained solidly the whole time they were there. But undeterred, Steve treated himself to a new, expensive golf club. And on the second tee, he decided to try out his new driver. He was so pleased and proud of this new golf club with the big head. He took a swing, and his hands were so wet from the rain that the club slipped from his grip and flew through the air, only to land in a ravine. His mate, of course, immediately rang his wife, laughing to say that Steve had just bought a new club and thrown it away. She, of course, immediately then rang Debbie. And the joke was formed that Debs knew all about it before the club had even landed at the bottom. Once they'd moved to Lancaster Avenue, Steve set his heart on having a bar at home, as was the tradition in South Africa. And he loved his home bar, the Swamp. And this became party central. Everyone was welcome. And as lots of their friends had children at the same age as theirs, they would all come round for food and drinks, and the children would play for hours on end. Theirs was always an open house, and they had so many fantastic party nights. And Steve also enjoyed having a barbecue, or a braai, as he called it, as soon as the weather allowed and there was a bit of sun and he was able to. He'd get the barbecue out for a braai and there would be all sorts on it. And he'd cook food for everyone. And again, of course, everyone was always welcome. He was the life and soul of the party. And he liked nothing more than being surrounded by friends and family. And Steve had always adored his mum. And he went every Sunday for a toastie and a catch-up, and always looked forward to their time together. He loved his weekends, and although he never really approved of the horses, Debs and Becky went to countless horse shows together, while Steve watched rugby with Jake. But over the years, he had proudly watched as Becky and Jake grew and made their own ways in the world. And it is to Jake that we now turn as he shares his thoughts with us.
I'm going to do my best to get through this. When I think about Dad, I could tell you 1,000 different stories. And when Dad passed away, I had always thought, what could I say or do? However, there is a link with all them stories, or most of them, and no, it's not just beer, but rugby. Rugby was life in our household. Dad started his love for rugby in South Africa. As well as playing football, where he played semi-pro, or so he said, he started to play at school and played the proper game, rugby union. He played in many different positions, but he loved playing inside centre, number 12. He played for many different teams over there, including the Springs Boys High School and Rhodesia. Dad then joined the South African Defence Force, which was his national service over there for a few years. Dad worked his way through the ranks and eventually became a sergeant. Dad told many stories about the army, some I can't mention right now, but for them of you that do know, you keep them memories with you. After a few years after his service, he played many different sports, including squash with his dad, and his dad always beat him, and cricket with Ian, but didn't really play rugby again in SA. That all changed once Dad came over here, and after meeting Mum, he was introduced to Leigh Rugby Union Club. He loved his years at Leigh, and played there for just under 10 years. Again, he had so many stories, the games up at Tilsley, which would always end in fisticuffs, or the games at Rossendale, where he would come off the pitch frozen. I used to love it whenever I got a fixture, I'd tell Dad who we were playing, and he'd usually say, "Oh yes, I remember playing there. I scored there many times." And to be fair to him, after talking to his teammates, he did score there. In fact, Dad scored a lot and actually held the try-scoring record in a season, which I'm sure one of you lads can tell me if it's still intact. Dad eventually retired at 40 and finished his years on the wing. However, 6 years after his retirement, he got a call off his old captain Neil Greenwood and was asked to come out of retirement for one game against a struggling Leigh team who Neil had said would even lose to their old team. The challenge was accepted and the comeback was on. He squeezed himself back into his shorts and t-shirt and was convinced they'd shrunk in the wash. The lads came out against a team half their age, the likes of Greenwood, Vernell, Ashurst, Davis, Thomas, Lloyd, Hall and Hillary, to name a few, suited up and played this team. And do you know what? They beat them. And that was it for Leigh Rugby Union Club until the summer of 2011, and a friend of mine, Josh, had asked me to come down, as back then I was quite quick. I came down and trained, and as they say, the rest is history. We had so many memories doing the under-14s, 15s, 16s and junior colts, as well as the tour to Scarborough, where the beer was taped to Dad's hand as he kept dropping the beer down the coach. After most games, if it was a win, Dad would end up inviting everybody back to ours, and Mum would flip as the house was never as tidy as she wanted it, or we'd had nothing in. This never stopped Dad, and it became normal for half the rugby team to be back at ours on a school night, as Dad would say. This is when the love for rugby came back to Dad, and when we started following Saracens, as they had a lot of ex-Springbok players. Our love for Saracens continued, and in 2015, after winning the semi-final, we made it to the final. We saw this as a great opportunity to watch Sarries and book tickets for the final. The first time we went, it was the four of us, me, Dad and the Wigmans. However, each year more people joined and it became a full weekend away. It was Dad's favourite thing to do. Even if we weren't in the final, it was such a great weekend, and whenever someone new came, he'd always say, "I can't wait to see their face when they walk through the stadium." And this year was no exception, as he had 3 new faces, Kerry, Mike and Chris, and their faces did not disappoint. We have already said that this yearly event is going to continue, but Mum will take the place of Dad. He'd love that. One thing I have missed out his dad did play one last game of rugby. A few years back, we were playing Oldham away, and we were short. JP had said to Dad, did he have his boots? And Dad jokingly laughed it off. It was only when we got to the ground, it turned out JP was being serious. Dad agreed to go on the bench, and again, squeezed in some shorts and t-shirt that had definitely been shrunk in the wash. As we ran out to warm up, I shouted to Dad, are you coming? Dad replied with a look on his face as if I had 3 heads. So Dad stayed on the side with his trusty pack of Marlboro Light and watched on. It was only 10 minutes into the game and he was called upon and entered the game at the age of 55. Dad slipped back onto the wing and would soon enter the game when their number 8 picked the ball up from the back of the scrum. Dad said to me he lined this number 8 up as he did years before and he had the tackle nailed on. But then he said he came too, looking up at the sky. The number 8 had ran over him and sent him back 10 yards. It wasn't the prettiest game, but for me, it was the best as I got to share the field and play the game we both love with my dad. Even when Dad got ill, he would always ask me about the rugby. And we even watched the games in hospital, where he would always complain about the Wi-Fi and how bad the picture was. But it didn't matter, as we got to do the thing we loved to do, sit and watch rugby together. I'd happily lose every game going forward if it would mean I could have one more day with my dad. Like I said, I could have spoke about anything, but the thing that we spoke about every day, even the day he died, was rugby. Now from me, Dad, as you said to yours, Humbagashli, Si Oshlale, Sikutunda, Injalo, Ubaba, which means go safely, we will always love you, Dad. Thank you.
Thank you, that was fantastic. Mike Graham would now like to read a poem in Steve's honour.
When the battle scars have faded, and the truth becomes a lie, and the weekend smell of liniment could almost make you cry. When the last ruck's well behind you, and the man that ran now walks, it doesn't matter who you are, the mirror sometimes talks. Have a good hard look, old son, the melon's not that great. The snoz that takes a sharp turn sideways used to be dead straight. You're an advert for arthritis, you're a thoroughbred gone lame. Then you ask yourself the question, why the hell you played the game? Was the logic in the head knocks, in the corks and in the cuts? Did common sense get pushed aside by manliness and guts? Do you sometimes sit and wonder why your time would often pass in a tangled mess of bodies with your head up someone's? With a thumb hooked up your nostril, scratching gently on your brain, and an overgrown Neanderthal rejoicing in your pain. Mate, you must recall the jersey that was shredded into rags, then the soothing sting of Dettol and a back of engraved with tags. It's almost worth admitting, with some degree of shame, that your wife was right in asking why the hell you played the game. Why you'd always walk home legless like a cow on roller skates, after drinking at the clubhouse with your low-down drunken mates. Then you'd wake up, check your wallet, not a solitary coin, drink Barocca by the bucket, throw an ice pack on your groin. Copping Sunday morning sermons about boozers being losers, while you limped like Quasimodo with 500 bruises. Yes, an urge to hug the porcelain and curse Sambuca's name would always pose the question why the hell you played the game. And yet with every wound reopened, as you grimly reminisce it, comes the most compelling feeling yet. God, you bloody miss it. From the first time that you laced a boot and tightened every stud, the virus known as rugby has been living in your blood. When you dreamt it, when you played it, all the rest took second fiddle. Now you're standing on the sideline, but your heart's still in the middle. And no matter where you travel, you can take it as expected. There will always be a breed of people hopelessly infected. If there's a teammate, then you'll find him like a gravitating force, with a common understanding and a beer or three, of course. And as you stand there telling lies like it was yesterday, old friend, you'll know that if you had the chance, you'd do it all again. You see, that's the thing with rugby. It will always be the same. And that, I guarantee, is why the hell you played the game.
You were all part of Steve's life in different ways. And for each of you here, he will mean different things. And you'll hold different memories of him from each stage of his life. And we'll conclude our spoken tributes to Steve with a poem which Jeff would now like to read in his memory.
When I leave this world, please do not cry, for I have gone up with the spirits in the sky. Do not place flowers by my side, for I never got them when I was alive. Do not dress in fancy clothes. Dress as you would if I were at home. Play the songs I have requested, for this is what I've always wanted. Do not say how great I was. Keep those memories between us. Instead, celebrate the times we have had. Remember the good, forget the bad. This is my only final request, that you do not cry when I am laid to rest. Remember that my spirit will be with you, and I'm still going to be there to see you through. One last time, do not cry. Celebrate my memories of life. Keep my memories in your heart, for we will never be far apart. Thank you.
Thank you. And so, with all the heartfelt words in mind that we've just heard, it seems appropriate that we should take a few minutes now for personal reflection. Time for you to think about and remember Steve in your own way. And as we do so, we'll listen to a very special song, and we'll look at some treasured photographs which his family would like to share with us today.
Scatterlings and fugitives, red eyes and weary brows, seek refuge in the night. They are the scatterlings of Africa, each uprooted one of my years on the road to Bellamanga, where the world began. I love the scatterlings of Africa, each and every one in their hearts of burning hunger beneath the copper sun. Broken wall, bicycle wheel, African song forging steel singing. Magic machine cannot match human being, human being. African ideas, African ideas, make the future clear, make the future clear. They are the scatterlings of Africa, each uprooted one. They're on the road to Bellamanga, where the world began. And for the scatterlings of Africa, the journey has begun. You shall find their hungry eyes beneath the copper sun. Oh, of the very first cry. Who made me here and why? Beneath the copper sun, my very first beginnings. Beneath the copper sky, lying deeply buried in the dust of old divide. And we are families of Africa, both you and I. Oh, Mama, we run the road to Telamanga, beneath this copper sky. And we are families of Africa, on a journey to the stars. Oh, Mama, far below we live forever, dreams of what we want. You can go up, 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 you can go
I do hope the last few minutes have given you the opportunity to reflect, remember, and take some comfort from those memories. For despite the sorrow you feel today, in time to come, those memories will be a source of comfort and joy. They are indeed the most precious of gifts. But friends and family, the time is now upon us when we must say our loving farewell to Steve's physical presence in our world. He leaves us with memories to cherish, happiness and love to remember, and gladness in our hearts that we were blessed with him as part of our lives. But first, I invite you to join with me in the Lord's Prayer. Let's say the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Could I please ask you to stand now, if you're able to? We have been remembering with affection and gratitude the life, of Stephen Hollingsworth. Steve. Steve, we are privileged that we knew you. We are privileged that we shared our lives with you. And we are privileged to have been loved by you. And we thank you with all our hearts for what you gave to each one of us. To everything, there is a season and a time to every purpose on earth, a time to be born and a time to die. Here, in this final act, in sorrow but without fear, in love and appreciation, tenderly and reverently, we commit the body of Steve to be cremated. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. And from this day onwards, the sun will rise and fade as it has done for all time. But Steve, you shan't fade. You will remain alive in our hearts, shining brightly for as long as we ourselves live. Steve, for now, with sorrow we bid you farewell. And with love, may you rest in peace. Please be seated. Today, in our time together, in sadness for his passing, but in gratitude for his life, with respect and love, we've honoured and remembered Steve, celebrating who he was in life and the rich legacy he leaves behind. And we can look back on our ceremony today and consider just how much Steve achieved in his life and the enduring memories he leaves you were created because he took the time to care. He enjoyed his life with Debs and he cherished his family and he valued the company of his friends. He loved and he was loved. And your lives are infinitely richer today for having had Steve pass through them. And so often, music is one thing that brings back special memories of a loved one. And all our music today has been especially chosen by his family. And as we come to the close of our service, and we leave this private place to face the outside world again, we'll play our last song in dedication to Steve, and as our final tribute to him. But first, Hamburg Ashley.